All righty. I think I'm here. Hi, it's me again, the snarky juror. Um, I think I've got this set up better than what I've been doing, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. So far in the Massachusetts versus Karen Reed, we've heard from about 8 other uh, witnesses, most of which are firefighters and paramedics. I don't know. I think they're laying it on a bit thick. I don't think we need all of these witnesses because they're saying basically the same thing. There's very few differences. That sounds weird. There's very few differences. They're wasting our time. They're wasting the court's time. They're wasting the public's time. You know, when you don't have enough to make something look big, you put a lot of filler in there. This is a filler trial. We're going to throw as much stuff in there, even though there's just one little sentence we want them to say. It's ridiculous to me. Now, that's how I'm perceiving it. I don't know how the jury is perceiving it, but we'll see. Okay, Katie McLaughlin, she testified earlier, and then they did a jury view. And if I've got this queued up correctly, we should be picking up after the jury view. The jury view? Yeah, they went to the house where the body was found. And they also had Miss Reed's Lexus sitting at the curb. Maybe I should have brought some of that in too, because the jury would have seen it. I wonder, can I find that real quick? Me? Find something quickly? Sure. Let me take a quick look here, because that is something I could share. No, it's not there. But I'll keep looking. Oh, stop. Of course, I'm not seeing it right away. Of course not. No, I'm not seeing it. So let's not waste any more time, because things are going to start getting longer and longer. Doggy's been fed. I've been fed. So I think maybe we're ready to go. So let me check this out and see. Haha. And let's start this up and see how far in the yeah, let's try this.
Yes or no, you cannot answer that because you don't know. You cannot recall, correct?
I'm going to back this up.
I mean, I would lean towards no. I have no recollection of ever being at her house.
Are you friends with her on social media?
Yes.
May I approach you?
If I hit the right button, we'll be fine. Okay, now I just need to let that play. We'll let that play out so we don't miss the first words. Okay, it's playing. And we'll just talk over it until it starts, so you don't miss anything. I know I'm kind of rough with this, but come on, anytime now. It's real hard for me to pinpoint stuff. Now, this witness, she'll answer questions from the prosecutor, but defense, she hems and haws and quibbles, and no, I something's really fishy going on because
They had them for.
I hear them setting up that squeaky chair.
Thank you.
Somebody just said thank you.
Mr. Parker.
Come on. And I don't remember if Court TV forgot to turn the video back on or not.
Okay, so we have four pieces of paper marked for identification that appear. You got these off of social media sites, Mr. Jackson?
That's correct.
Okay. When did you get these?
I couldn't tell you the exact dates of yours.
We have
I'm skipping.
take a trip.
To the beach.
Did I go to the beach at some point?
I don't know if this was
with
in
these
front of the
people,
jury or
yes.
not. I don't
When did you go to
remember.
the beach with all those folks?
I don't know. I don't know when this picture is from.
Have you
It
gone?
seems old to me, but
Have you? Well, you can see yourself. I mean,
yeah.
What was that? Did you say it seems old to you?
Yeah, to me.
Okay.
This isn't like a recent to me.
how old do you think that photograph is?
I don't know. It could be around high school. I'm not sure.
And I know Mr. Jackson didn't want to ask you how old you are. When did you get out of high school?
2014. I
Okay.
graduated.
Yeah, this is before.
So could that have been?
Jury's
around
not watching this
2014?
part. Because here they are standing for the jury, I believe.
What you see in here.
Let's see if we're in the right spot yet.
Ms. McLaughlin, did you say you had a water? Is there a water waiting for you out there?
Okay, I think this is where we need to be. I'm trying to be as fair as I can of giving you the jurors information and view. You're free to go. There's all kinds of stuff out there that's not being brought up. But I'm trying to stay as legit as possible.
This court is in session. Please be seated.
There we go.
So jurors, from time to time, there are things that I need to discuss with the lawyers, as you saw. We try and do it as quickly as we can. It's in an effort to make sure that what you see in here in this case is appropriate for you to see in here. So sometimes we spend a little time now that will save us a lot of time later. So we do appreciate your patience.
Those captions aren't available right now.
Mayor, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. McLaughlin, thank you for your patience. When we last left off, I was asking you about your relationship with Caitlin Albert. You recall that?
Yes.
I want to ask you a few more questions about that. You and Caitlin Albert have known each other for how long?
Since high school.
Which is, give me a span of time.
So
I graduated in
probably about 10 years.
You have traveled with Caitlin Albert and friends. When I say traveled, I don't mean to exotic locations. I mean day trips, etc.
Yes.
You have a group of mutual friends together, correct?
We have mutual friends. Correct.
Those mutual friends have gone on day trips with you and Caitlin Albert involved
Correct.
on more than one occasion, as a matter of fact.
Correct.
On many occasions, as a matter of fact.
I don't know.
More than 5?
I don't know.
More than 10?
I don't know.
You've seen photographs of you with Caitlin Albert on some of these day trips, correct?
Yes.
You've seen at least 3 of those photographs.
Yes.
You're friends with Caitlin Albert on social media.
Yes.
Other than the 3 photographs that you've seen, you just talked about, there have been other events that you've been at with Caitlin Albert that weren't necessarily photographed, or we don't have those photographs, correct?
Probably.
Well, that was an
Caitlin
omission.
Albert is the same Caitlin Albert that's the daughter of Brian and Nicole Albert, as you sit here.
Yes. As I sit here today, yes.
And you know that Caitlin Albert also has siblings, Brian Albert Jr., correct?
As I sit here today, yes, I know that.
And you also know, as you sit here today, that 34 Fairview was, at the time of January 29th, 2022, the Albert home, correct?
I know that as of today.
He's got to word things just right.
You indicated, let me rephrase that. When you showed up at 34 Fairview that morning, did you recognize that address or recognize the home as being that of Caitlin Albert's?
No.
You have since learned that that was Caitlin Albert's home.
As I know that now.
That's what he asked.
And you gave your original statement to Trooper Proctor the next day.
Yes.
And from that day to this day, or let's take yesterday, from that day to yesterday, you learned that 34 Fairview was the Canton Albert family home, correct?
You're asking if I know from.
Between those 2 dates,
Yes.
between the time you spoke with Trooper Proctor in this report,
She knew.
yesterday when you testified, you now know that that's the Albert home.
Yes.
And you also indicated that between that report that you gave to Trooper Proctor, that statement that you gave to Trooper Proctor, and yesterday's testimony, your statement has evolved. You've already admitted that, correct?
I don't think I agreed with you on that.
It's changed. It's different.
I've always testified to I feel as though my testimony has been consistent.
I appreciate how you might feel. I'm just interested in the actual facts. You didn't tell Trooper Proctor anything about this officer questioning my client. Correct?
Objection.
So I'm going to see counsel at sidebar because I think this morphed into a different.
Because she thinks there's more something. Too bad. Oh, I don't have my ring light on. Why don't I have my ring light on? Because I don't have it turned on. That's why. Oh, you can see me now. I'm sorry. Such a shock. Such a shock. Sorry about that. Yeah. I can turn it down a little bit though. How's that? Is that okay? Will that do? We'll leave it like that for now.
You agree, Mr. McLaughlin, that the statement that you gave to Trooper Proctor is not the same as the statement that you gave to these jurors yesterday? Right?
Yes.
God,
Yeah, just a moment.
Yes.
you got to pin her down like they pinned down Sullivan. Gilbert and Sullivan? Who was it that got pinned down? Whatever. I have a feeling defense has something. And they're trying to find a way to get it into evidence, maybe.
A couple of other questions. When you did make this statement to Trooper Proctor, your visit to Canton PD was coordinated by another officer to put you and Trooper Proctor together for the interview, correct?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall being contacted by a completely different officer to say, hey, Trooper Proctor wants to talk to you, come on into Canton PD, let's have an interview?
I don't remember exactly how the interview was set up.
Listen to
That was
this.
my next question. You may have just told me this. Do you have any recollection who set that interview up?
I don't.
Does the name
No.
Kevin Albert sound familiar?
Albert.
No.
You know Kevin Albert?
No.
You know him to be a police officer at Canton PD?
No.
You know him to be the brother of Brian Albert?
Objection.
No.
The objection sustained.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Lally, any redirect?
Yes.
Oh, it's time to speed it up. This shouldn't take long, though.
So firefighter McLaughlin, you went to high school with Caitlin Allen, correct?
Yes.
And could you describe the nature of your relationship, if any, with Caitlin?
I would describe it as we're not close friends.
You ever said
I would say we're more acquaintances. We have mutual friends. I don't have a one-on-one relationship with her.
And you were asked some questions about social media, correct?
Yes.
And if you could, or if you could guesstimate about how many friends, and I'm sort of throwing air quotes in there, how many friends on social media would you have?
I don't know, probably 500.
And of those probably 500 friends on social media, how many of those are actual friends that you talk to, interact with beyond social media?
Much less than that.
Now, prior to, well, let me ask you this. As far as, would you say that you saw Caitlin Albert more so when you were in high school or more so since you have graduated from high school?
I would say probably more in high school because we were there every day. So
And about what year or so was it that you graduated?
2014.
And as far as any sort of photographs that were referenced to you, have you seen those photographs?
Here
Yes.
today, I saw them.
Do you have any idea where or when those photographs were taken?
I don't remember.
And of those photographs,
Yes.
it's not just you and Caitlin Albert in a photograph. Is that correct?
Correct.
So a larger group of people. Is that correct?
Correct.
When you were asked about sort of these day trips, they were sort of trips specifically on a day to a beach. It looks like, correct?
Correct.
And to a beach with a larger group of people. Is that correct?
Correct.
And with reference to Caitlin Albert specifically, have you ever socialized with her in any setting beyond a setting that contained a large group of people?
No.
Now, with respect to, you went to, you say high school, you graduated from Canton High School, correct?
Correct.
And you grew up in Canton, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you know Caitlin Albert before you attended Canton High School?
No, that's probably when we first really interacted with high school.
And essentially, you live within the town you work within the town that you grew up in, correct?
Correct.
And is that abnormal from a civil service perspective?
No, from a civil service perspective, you're given more points for residency. So it's actually, I would say, preferred, or you're placed higher on the list if you have residency in that town.
So it's actually preferred and more common than uncommon as far as growing up in a town and then working in that same town in a civil service position like a firefighter.
Yes.
Now, during the course of the time that you've been on the Canton Fire Department, have you received calls to residencies or other places or even patients that you either knew or were familiar with?
Yes.
And would that be a reason for you to not go on a call?
No.
Nobody insinuated she didn't want to go on a call.
Respond to a call when a call is made and you're on duty in that station, correct?
Yes.
The objection sustained. Ask the question differently.
As far as when you're on duty as a firefighter at a particular station house, and you get a call, what, if any, choice do you have to respond to any particular call?
I don't have a choice. I just have to respond to the call.
And then prior to that date of January 29th, had you ever been over through socialization or otherwise Caitlin Albert's house?
Not that I ever remember.
Has she ever been over your
Wait
house?
until they come up with
No.
a picture.
And again, had you ever socialized with her outside of a large group of people?
No.
When you responded on that morning, just after 6 a.m., the house of 34 Fairview Road, did you know who lived there?
No.
During the time since January 29th of 2022, have you ever spoken to Caitlin Albert about what happened that morning in front of 34 Fairview Road?
No.
Now, you were asked some questions on cross-examination about knowing sort of Caitlin Albert's parents' names or siblings' names or things of that. Correct?
Small town.
And prior to January 29th, you didn't know any of those things.
You
Is that
should
correct?
know these
No.
things.
You learned of them subsequently. Is that correct?
Yes.
May we approach just briefly?
Okay.
This is ridiculous. Gee, high school kids don't talk about stuff, do they? They don't gossip about prominent families, do they? They don't talk about, popular kids, do they? So she has no clue, does she? Granted, 10 years ago, but there's certain things that you do remember. And she's playing stupid way too much, in my humble opinion. And I think people know it. I could go forward, couldn't I? I'll get the hang of this some year. About the time I figure it out. I'm going to let it play this time. The gentleman on the left is the brother of the deceased. And the lady on the right is this guy's wife. It's got to be extremely uncomfortable for Karen to sit there with them right there on her left.
So, Ms. McLaughlin, you learned of those other people's names within the Albert family subsequent to your response to this call on January 29th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
You learned
I
those
didn't know
through
anything
various
until
media
yesterday.
reports in relation to this case. It's not something that you had any conversations with anybody about, correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
All right.
Your Honor, if I may.
Okay. Okay.
You indicated, Ms. McLaughlin, that Mr. Lally just asked you about these 500 friends on social media. A couple of quick questions about that. Of those 500 friends on social media, how many of those have you taken day trips with?
I don't know.
How many of those have you gone to the beach with?
I don't know.
How many of those have you posed for photographs with?
I don't know.
How many of those have you posed for photographs in swimwear with?
I don't know.
How many of those have you been photographed with your arm around while that other friend is drinking a beer?
Sustained. Sustained.
Ms.
That
McLaughlin,
all because
all
he
of
went
those
on and on
things
about it.
that I just mentioned, you have done with Miss Caitlin Albert.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
That's all I have.
Okay. All right, Firefighter McLaughlin, you are all set.
I don't know if this is too loud or not.
All right, jurors, we are getting ready to go for our view. So we're about to visit a place which you'll be hearing about some more. You've heard about, you've seen photographs of. And in court terminology, we call this a view. The purpose of the view is to help you better to understand the evidence, which you'll hear during the trial, and to help you appreciate the location and its surroundings. The view that you will take is a part of this case. The observations that you make while on the view may be used and considered in your deliberations in reaching a verdict. The place that we're going to go, you've seen photos of, you've heard it, it's 34 Fairview Road. The lawyers and I will accompany you on the bus. The attorneys may point out to you the arrangement of the scene and items that they want you to pay special note of, but otherwise they cannot discuss anything in this case in regard to this case, and they can't talk to you. All right, they'll be able to do an opening here, and they'll be able to point these things out. While you're on the view, it's very important that you can't take notes, and you certainly can't use your phones and take photographs. All right, it's really just for you to see. You cannot conduct any independent investigation while we're there or at any time during the trial, as you've been told. You're not to return to the scene or ask anyone else to do it for you until the case is over. So this is your opportunity to take a look when we go. What you are to do on the view may be best summarized in two very familiar words, which is stop and look. Okay. Your responsibility is to see the place, to observe it carefully, and to remember what you see. So during your trip to and from the place that we're going to view, you're not to discuss this case or anything about it among yourselves or with anyone, and you are not to permit anyone to talk with you about the case. You'll be under the supervision of our great court officers at all times, and you'll remain together until you return to court, unless the court officers direct you otherwise. And just so that you know, because some of this came up during our jury selection process, spectators, if there are any, and all members of the press have been ordered to stay 100 yards away from you. All right, so you can go and you can look and take your time looking without worrying about any interference from anyone. All right, so with that, Mr. Clerk, could you swear in, please, the court
The
officer?
court officers, raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear you will take this jury upon the premises in question and there suffer them to view the same and any property, place, or thing bearing upon the issues on the trial, as they shall seem necessary, that you will not permit the parties to enter in a debate in front of the jury or a person to speak to them, unless it be Adam Lally for the Commonwealth and Alan Jackson for the defendant, they to point out such places or things as they deem expedient for the determination of the issue, and that you will keep the jury together until they shall return into court, except the court shall otherwise order, so help you God. Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Lally, do you want to do a short view opening?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So ladies and gentlemen, as her owner just described, we're about to go to a place. When we arrive there, and at any point in time when we're there, this is not a point where we can have any sort of conversation or back and forth. So all I'm going to be asking you to do is just take note of certain locations and certain items as you see them. And again, as with anything in this case, this is as you find them, as you observe. Okay. So first, I'm going to ask you to sort of, when we arrive in a general area, as far as taking note of sort of street names when you're coming into and when you're exiting from this particular area. When we arrive at a specific location, I'm going to ask you to take note of certain things about the roadway. Okay? Certainly any abutments to the roadway, any residences that you observe, the distances between the roadway, and any landmarks or any items that you observe on that property, specifically a driveway, specifically a front door, any other sort of items of interest within the front lawn area of that. I'm also going to ask you to take note of the roadway itself, and sort of the width of that roadway, whether or not you find any sort of lanes separating within that roadway, and then the individual width of some of those lanes as well. Lastly, there is also going to be a vehicle as well, and I'm going to ask you to take note of certain things with respect to that vehicle, okay? With respect to the size of it, with respect to the height of it, with respect to anything that you observe specifically from the front, the side, the back, all of the exterior of that vehicle, and then also some of the interior of that. And specifically, I'm going to ask you to take note of sort of the center console in the front driver's compartment of that vehicle, and anything that you observe in that location as well. And that is all I'm asking you to do on this case, and I thank you again for your time and attention.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time we've been able to speak to you directly, so I want to take the opportunity to introduce myself. And thank you for your service and thank you for your time and commitment to this. I'm going to echo a lot of what Mr. Lally just said. There's nothing magical about this other than it gives you perspective. It's an opportunity to introduce you in three-dimensional form to stuff that you've been seeing in two-dimensional form. Photographs, some of the testimony, diagrams that you might see.
So I'm sorry, we're really pointed on what you can say.
What we're going to ask you to do is take special note of the relationships of physical items out at the scene. Much as Mr. Lally just indicated, there are going to be physical things out at the scene.
He could say anything he wanted.
A fire hydrant, a house. We're going to ask you to take special note of where those are in relation to other things physically at the scene. That will hopefully, with the court's instruction, give you some assistance in putting together the testimony that you think is relevant, and the documents that you think are relevant. Again, to echo what Mr. Lally said, we're going to ask you to look at the roadway, the vehicle, the house, the physical items at the home, and the relationship between and among all of those things to each other. Hopefully, that will give you a very good understanding of what we're dealing with, especially with the exhibits. Thank you.
All right, so folks will be all set. We'll see you at the bus in a little bit.
Just make sure your notebooks are closed.
You are muted. Goodbye.
I am muted. Goodbye. Okay. I don't know how long they were gone. Okay, what do you want to see? Me doing this or my ugly mug while I'm doing this? We'll do that. And I'll find the spot. Da-da-da-da-da. 343. Oh. Okay. Wrong button. Waiting for the jury to come in again. This is afterwards, if I've figured this out correctly. Don't bet on it.
This court is in session.
All right, so jurors, I want to remind you of the instructions that I gave you before we went on the view, and then I have a caution for you. So we took a view today, the purpose of which was to help you to better understand the evidence, which you'll hear during the course of the trial, and to help you appreciate the location and its surroundings. The view that you took is part of this case, and the observations that you made while on the view may be used and considered in your deliberations. Remember that I told you that what you were to do on that view is best summarized as simply stop and look. Your responsibility was to see the place, observe it carefully, and remember what you saw. You were cautioned that while on the view, you were not to take any notes or photographs, and that you were not to conduct any independent investigation while we were there or at any time during the trial. So independent investigation includes, but is not limited to, any measurements that you may have taken or attempted to take. So to the extent that any of you did that, you must totally disregard it, because you must find the facts from the evidence presented to you
Somebody
in this
must have had a
courtroom.
tape measure.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Lally, do you have a witness for us?
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth will call Mr. Gregory Woodbury to the stand.
We're going to speed this up. I don't know about anybody else, but wah, 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 wah. Can't handle it.
Step up to the witness stand, please. Face that question. You solemnly swear the evidence of the court and jury in the case now hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Thank you. You take this stand.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Greg Woodbury, Woodbury.
And what do you do for us?
Lieutenant paramedic on the Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire Department?
About 24 years now.
How long have you had the rank of lieutenant with Canton Fire Department?
That's been 8 years now.
Now, prior to working with Canton Fire Departments, what, if any, other work do you have within that same sort of?
Prior to being on Canton Fire, I was an EMT paramedic in the North Shore area.
Moving forward.
Did you respond to that call, sir?
Yes, I did.
And you were assigned to the engine, is that correct?
Correct.
Who, if anyone else, was assigned to the engine that day with you on that engine?
So we had Caden McLaughlin and Frank Walsh were my two engine crew.
And in addition to yourself and your engine, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatuses?
Ambulance one also responded with us. So that was Tony Flamati, Matt Kelly, and Tim Nuttall had also hopped on the ambulance. He was coming in for the shift in the morning, came in early to beat the storm.
And you recall where the call was in regards to what the address was?
I don't remember the address offhand, but it was not that far away in the district.
And when you arrived in the engine, when you first arrived on scene, as you were arriving on scene, what, if anything, did you sort of see as upon your arrival?
So the police were already there. We were approaching the scene. I could see several people off to the side in the yard doing something, so we went to investigate that.
Say off to the side, was that to your left, your right, or something?
So the way I was approaching the street, it was on the left-hand side.
And when you indicate you see some group of people, is that correct?
Yeah, there was a few people around. I don't remember exactly how many or what they were doing.
And when you start to make your way over there, when you arrive on scene,
Yep.
What is sort of the first thing you do?
So we went to...
Here's my question. It would behoove them to already know the answers to the questions and whether or not it's a yes or no. And if it's no, then why the hell ask the question? You're just wasting time and you're boring your audience. And it's not bringing anything more to the table except aggravation, in my view, in my opinion. And he does this all the time. It's his witness. He should know what he's going to say. He should know that when I ask this question, he's not going to know the answer. Or the answer is going to be no. How valuable is it for me to ask the question? I swear he's trying to stack the deck. I swear he's trying to add as much fluff as he can in there to make it look like he's got this big prosecution going on here. Look at all the witnesses. Look at all the evidence. Comes down to that. This guy irks the heck out of me, to put it mildly.
Evaluate the patient. So, I believe someone had started CPR prior to us getting there, so we went to continue that.
I'm going to slow it down.
Someone had started CPR prior to you.
I don't remember the particular individual that was doing it as we arrived.
My only question, sir, so it's someone outside of your department, correct?
Yeah.
And do you know if it was one of the police officers or someone else?
I don't remember.
He must have a set list of
Obviously,
questions that he just asks
Dispatch
everybody.
response to an unresponsive man, correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you're arriving on scene, you say you see that sort of cluster of people. Were you able to see that unresponsive male at that point?
Not in the vehicle, not until I exited the vehicle.
And at some point, much later or subsequently, did you come to learn the identity of the unresponsive male or the patient that you were involved in?
Afterwards, they told me yes. At the time, I did not know.
And what did you learn his name to be subsequently?
I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous and blanking right now.
Was it Mr. John O'Keefe?
Yes, correct.
And when you first came over to where Mr. O'Keefe was on the ground, is that correct?
Yes, he was.
What kind of position was his body in when you first observed?
He was lying supine on the ground, like on his back. He was parallel to the street, about 8 feet away from the snowbank.
And in reference to that, as far as the snow
Parallel
is
to the
concerned, what if
street.
anything,
Here's the
what if any
street.
snow did you observe on or around where you were?
He was covered with snow, and there was snow around the area.
And so from a treatment of Mr. O'Keefe as a patient, what is sort of the first thing that you did or
We started CPR, or CCR, sorry, immediately. Someone went to go get a board to get him onto that so we can get him onto the stretcher and move him to the ambulance. And then someone else is trying to get the backstory, trying to figure out the scenario that we're dealing with.
if I could just stop you for a moment. So
Yep.
you mentioned CCR, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the difference between CCR versus CPR?
CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So that is when you're helping someone breathe. CCR is when we first get to a scene. They changed the protocols a little while ago, so we don't have to give respirations right away. We can just do compressions. It's a little more effective to get
Heart going.
the blood flowing quickly.
Thank you. As far as your involvement in patient care, sort of what was that during that initial phase where Mr. O'Keefe was supine on the ground? What was your involvement in patient care at that point?
I was assisting with the CPR, making sure everyone else was doing their task. As lieutenant, I kind of got to manage the other people and make sure everyone's on target for what they're supposed to be doing.
And during that initial time that you're outside in the area where Mr. O'Keefe is on the ground, what, if any, observations did you make as far as injuries to Mr. O'Keefe at that time?
Outside on the ground, he was covered in snow. So we're really not doing any sort of secondary survey initially. The primary concern is the primary survey, which is airway, breathing, circulation. He was not breathing. He had no pulse. So our primary concern is to get that going.
And at some point, are you able to get him from the ground to the back of the ambulance?
Yeah, we moved him onto a longboard, then moved him from longboard onto the stretcher, and brought the stretcher over the ambulance and loaded him in there.
You mentioned at some point upon your sort of initial arrival at the patient that different people were tasked with different things. Correct?
Yes.
And someone was tasked with trying to get sort of what you termed the backstory. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why is that important?
So when you have someone unconscious, unresponsive, you want to know when they were last well, the last breathing, last seen, trying to figure out why someone is on the ground. There are different reasons of why they could be there, trying to figure that out. Normal people don't lay down in the snow. So trying to evaluate the reason the person was unconscious.
Laid into the snow.
And so you're able to get him on, Mr. O'Keefe, onto a stretcher into the back of the ambulance, correct?
Yes.
Fair to say that the lighting in the back of the ambulance is better than it was outside.
Correct.
And when you're in the back of the ambulance, are you able to then do or participate in that secondary survey?
Yeah, we started doing a secondary survey after we started getting good compressions going. Someone was working on the intubation, and then one of the procedures is to strip off the clothes and evaluate the person.
And if you recall, how were the clothes removed?
I don't recall exactly which method they used. Typically, we cut them off, but I'm not sure if they did that or they just pulled them off.
And what, if anything, do you recall as to Mr. O'Keefe's clothing and sort of what he was wearing when he was found?
I really wasn't paying attention to it. The primary concern is trying to revive him.
So to that secondary survey, as far as once you're in the back of the ambulance, what, if anything, did you observe as far as injuries on Mr. O'Keefe?
He had a hematoma or a bruising. The right eye was very prominent. There was some scratches on the right forearm. Was most of the external injuries we noted.
And now, in addition, so as far as people on scene, there were a number of different firefighters from your department. And you mentioned that the police were on scene when you arrived. Is that correct?
Correct.
So beyond the police and fire, what, if any, other individuals did you observe at some point when you were on scene?
There was some other civilians there. I really wasn't paying attention to them.
Now, with reference to that backstory that you were talking about, at any point in time, either outside of the ambulance or inside of the ambulance, who, if anyone, was tasked by you or anyone else to try and obtain that back?
I think Katie McLaughlin was the one that obtained the backstory.
The previous witness.
And if you know, was there any other conversation that you were present for between any of your other firefighters and any of those civilians?
That was primarily when she relayed to us the information that she had obtained. We were trying to figure out the scenario of why he was found unconscious, unresponsive.
Let me ask you this way. So as far as arrival at the patient when he's on the ground,
Yep.
Who gets there first? You and the other individuals in the engine, or the firefighters in the ambulance?
We both respond from the same station at the same time. The engine's in the front, the ambulance usually in the rear. So I believe we pulled over, the ambulance pulled over at the same time as us. I believe C5 went as well, which is the captain. He was also responding with us.
Now, as far as the person that Firefighter McLaughlin spoke to, what, if anything, did you know about that person at that time?
At that time, I knew nothing. I knew that it was someone that had been with him. She relayed the information of what she had heard to us.
I believe this
The
guy.
information that Firefighter McLaughlin, without reference to what it was, but the information that Firefighter McLaughlin was able to obtain, did she communicate that to you and the other firefighters in the ambulance?
Yes. Yeah, she came in the ambulance, told us what she had heard.
No hesitation, quick responses. If he's not sure, he says it. Good witness.
As far as the information that Firefighter McLaughlin provided, did that comport with what you were observing as far as injuries to Mr. O'Keefe?
Objection. Sustained. You can lay a foundation if
Quit coaching
Now,
the
as far as,
prosecution, Judge.
again, the injuries that you observed
Oh
to Mr. O'Keefe
God.
in the back of the ambulance were what?
It was the bruising of the right eye and the scratches on the forearm.
And what, if anything, did Firefighter McLaughlin indicate to you had been told to her?
That someone said she had hit him, and he was last seen.
Objection. Move to strike.
sustained, that will be stricken.
May we approach him?
Okay.
Thank God. These people. Can't find my cursor. This is ridiculous. Wait a minute. They take a big old long break here. So we're going to skip forward some. But she's coaching. She's coaching the prosecution. When the defense has a valid objection, she upholds it, but then she says, do it this way. She was really bad about doing stuff like that when they did the pretrial motions. When that's one of the things that I saw before I started watching this. And she was coaching him the whole time. It's like, did he not get his own law license? Is it a junior law license? It's very aggravating to me. And it's one thing if he was talking about something that everybody was riveted about, but we don't know. At least I don't. Okay, I'm trying to get this to come up. Oh, come on. And a circle. It's going round and round and round. Because it looks like, unless I'm missing something, which is possible. Okay, almost. All right, you're going to see the fan going for a minute or two. Because when I go any further, it seems to freeze up. Can I go faster? Can I speed that up? Now we're going to really get dizzy.
Go right ahead, Mr. Lally.
So Lieutenant Woodbury, turning attention back to the treatment of Mr. O'Keefe in the back of the ambulance, correct?
Yes.
With respect to that, you testified that you don't recall sort of specifically anything as far as clothing for Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
I was not paying attention to the clothing.
And so to that point, what were you paying attention to at that?
Primarily, the big issue was doing the CCR, then to CPR. We're trying to resuscitate the person as best we can. We know with the
Focused on the
hypothermic patient, it's very difficult. It's a longer treatment protocol than a typical cardiac arrest because we have to do the CPR for an extended period of time. We have to get the patient warmed up. So the clothing is just quickly removed versus examined or looked at. And the focus was on getting compressions done. Someone was trying to intubate, getting a line started. So that's what we're mainly focused on.
As far as treatment is concerned, what, if any, sort of interplay or intersection is there between a cardiac arrest and a hypothermic patient?
When someone's hypothermic and in a cardiac arrest, we can't declare them dead or passed on until they've been warmed up. A lot of times with hypothermic patients, they can appear to be dead when they're still actually alive. So there has been instances where people have woken up in morgues that were hypothermic when their body warmed up a little bit. So we have to be very cautious, very careful about treating them as much as we can, as careful as we can. We can't shake them too much, can't move them too much. So it's getting the blood circulating and then starting ventilating after a few minutes.
Back to the CCR, the chest compression.
Yep.
We're talking about. What, if any, sort of based on your training experience, what, if any, sort of protocols are? Well, let me ask you this: were you doing chest compressions throughout the entirety of this interaction with the patient?
No, chest compressions, most people do them about 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, it's very tiring to do chest compressions, so we swap off every few minutes. So a different person will come in and do the compressions. They'll do it for a little while, go into a different task. Someone else will come in and do compressions.
Is that sort of protocol that you followed in this instance?
Yes. Yes, we were rotating the person doing compressions.
And the ambulance at some point leaves the scene and goes to a hospital, is that correct?
Correct.
Do you know what hospital? Mr.
Good Samaritan Medical Center.
If you could just wait.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Questions.
Yeah, Good Samaritan Medical Center.
And did you go along for that ambulance ride?
No, I did not.
Where did you go?
So as the lieutenant on the engine, I stayed with the engine. I detailed my 2 other engine personnel to the ambulance. So they went with the 2 engine personnel, the 2 regular people on the ambulance, as well as an additional person. Timmy Nuttall was the extra person for that one.
And so you take the engine and go with.
I went back to the station.
And at some point shortly after that, are you called back to the roadway of Fairview Road?
Yes.
And same general area of Fairview Road?
Yes, same address.
And how is it that you get from the station back to Fairview?
So we had struck a box to cover the personnel that we had detailed. That means we send out a page looking for additional people to come in. We had Sam Pock come in. So he was my engine driver, and I was in the lieutenant seat. We responded back in engine 4.
And the ambulance that had been there on Fairview Road, which previously was at Good Samaritan.
Yes. Yeah. A call like that takes an extended period of time, even at the hospital, to assist them there. So we had to get an ambulance from Station 2.
And if you know who was on that ambulance from Station 2?
That was Jason Becker and Dan Whitley.
Now, with reference to this particular call, what, if anything, was this secondary dispatch with regard to?
So this call was for a Section 12, which is someone in having a psychological issue.
And do you know who that Section 12 was in regard to?
Yeah, this was for Karen Reed.
And
Yes, she was slightly
at
upset.
some points, you would go back to the scene along with the engine and the second ambulance from Station 2.
Yeah, so the engine got there first. The ambulance coming from another station, so it was a couple extra minutes before they got there.
And when you arrived, who, if anyone else, was sort of on scene on Fairview Road?
The police were still on scene. They had never left. So initially it was me, Sam Pock, and the police. So I went up to try to get the backstory of why we're doing a Section 12 and what was going on.
And at some point, well, when you first arrived, without regard to what was said to you, but who, if anyone, do you speak with to sort of try to gain this information or backstory?
When I got onto the scene, I talked to the police that was there.
Who'd you talk to, sir? The police officer who was
Police
there?
officer, yes, sorry.
And do you recall specifically who that police officer was?
I really did not pay attention to the individual officer.
And at some point, do you have a conversation, or what, if any, conversation do you have with the patient, in this case, the defendant?
So it was when we identified Karen Reed as the patient, the ambulance arrived shortly after. We started talking to her and trying to get her into the ambulance to talk to her further.
And just to be clear for the records, when you say Miss Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, she's right over there.
That's a record reflect identification of the identified witness?
Yes.
In the general vicinity of where the police cars are.
And what is sort of the purpose of this initial conversation that you're having with Ms. Reed?
Sorry, I tried to pause. it.
For Section 12, that's when someone's made threats to harm themselves or others. So I just had to judge her mental ability at the time and if she was a threat to us and how much of a threat she was to herself. So just a quick evaluation, see how her behavior was.
And what, if any, observations did you make of her during your quick conversation?
She appeared very distraught, very upset. Initially just trying to explain the situation to her about going to the hospital with the Section 12, and she was resistant to that.
And so when you say she was resistant to that, what if anything?
Nobody
She did not want to go.
Hold on. You cannot talk over each other,
Oh,
and the objection's overruled.
Please go ahead.
So what was the question again, please? Yeah.
So what, if anything, when you say she was resistant, what, if anything, did she communicate to you, or observations that you made in regard to that?
She did not want to go to the hospital, and she didn't think she needed any assistance.
And what, if anything, you sort of, you mentioned you were explaining sort of the process to her, what, if anything, are you saying in that explanation?
Well, when the Section 12 gets written, it's written by police. Once it's written, we are required to transport to the hospital. Section 12 means that they believe you're a threat to yourself or others. So you have to get evaluated at the hospital by the hospital staff there to see how mentally stable you are.
Now, at this time of this conversation,
She's wandering around in shock.
The relationship between Ms. Reed and the prior patient, Ms. Reed.
I knew they had a relationship. I wasn't sure if they were married or engaged or what their status was, but I knew she was did have a strong relationship with him.
And in reference to Mr. O'Keefe, during your conversation with Ms. Reed, what, if anything, was she asking or saying in reference to Mr. O'Keefe?
She kept repeating, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She seemed very concerned about that. We're trying to explain to her that we cannot declare him dead. He's being evaluated. He's being treated. They're trying to treat him the best they can.
And as far as when she's stating these things to you, is this, as far as the sort of tonality of her voice while she's saying these things, can you describe that?
She was very up and down. It was a repetitive conversation with her. She's obviously experiencing a lot of different emotions. So just her emotional state was all over the place.
It
And as far
would
as
be
the
expected.
sort of second time that you're on scene, about how long period of time are we talking?
That was about between 15 and 20 minutes.
And as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed, where did she go? Did you stay with her sort of the entire time that she was on scene that second time? Or
Because she was resistant, we're trying to get her to voluntarily go. If someone voluntarily goes, even with the section written, they're released a lot quicker. So we're trying to convince her to go, be willing to go with us versus being forced. If at some point we have to actually force her to go against her will, then it's going to be a much longer hospital stay. So our main goal with staying on the scene so long was to try to get her willingly to go. Just makes her experience much better.
I had
just to be
spaghetti.
clear, when you say we, who
Excuse me.
specifically are you?
It was me, Dan Whitley, Jason Becker were the ones talking to her in the back of the ambulance.
They'll be heard
When you
next.
clear, sort of when you leave the scene, where is Ms. Reed at that point?
So the ambulance transported her to the Good Samaritan. We also detailed Sam Park as the driver.
So the gentleman who had driven, or the firefighter that had driven you in the engine to the scene that
Yep.
drives the ambulance away.
Yes,
Could
correct.
you say his name again, please?
Sam Park.
Sam what?
Sam Park.
Spell it, please. The last name.
P-O-C-H is the last name.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay. Eddie?
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I will slow it down.
Mr. Woodbury, you and I have never met or spoken, correct?
No.
I know you had said you were nervous, so I'm going to try and make
Okay.
this fairly brief,
Thank you.
sir. I just have a couple of areas that I'd like to go
Okay.
to you with. So with regard to your interaction with Karen Reed and what you actually heard from her mouth,
Okay.
That's sort of where I want to concentrate, as opposed to anything that anybody else may have said to you about what they believe she might have said. Okay?
Okay.
And it seems to me that your main interaction with her was not when the initial call came in to respond to, a man who was unresponsive in the snow. It was after you went back to the station in the engine and then came back to the scene for the purposes of the Section 12 that you described. Would that be fair to say?
Correct.
And when you came back to the scene for the Section 12, it's also fair to say that the Section 12 issue was your focus, correct?
Correct.
You had an order in hand, correct?
The police had it and they gave it to us when we got there.
Right. Okay. So you got an order in hand once you got there,
Correct.
which is what you expected to happen, correct?
Yes.
And your focus at that point is, okay, and I don't want to be too, flip, but we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Is that a fair characterization?
That is one way to put it.
And you wanted to do it the easy way.
Yes, correct.
And you wanted to persuade Karen Reed that she should want to do it the easy way, correct?
Yes.
And after some
Fair.
conversation back and forth where she was initially resistant, she eventually agreed, yes, I'll do, not to put words in your mouth or hers, but to the effect of, yes, we'll do this the easy way, correct?
Did get her to agree to transport. Yeah.
And with regard to her state of mind, I believe you had testified that she appeared to be very distraught,
Yes, correct.
going through a lot of emotions,
Yes.
grief-stricken,
Oh, that's one of them. Yes.
hysterical at times,
Yes.
raising her voice at times,
Yes.
crying at times.
I didn't see any actual tears, but
That
yeah,
type.
that type of emotional display.
All right. And so in terms of the only commentary that you heard with regard to her feelings or questions regarding John O'Keefe, it was the statements that you heard repetitively over and over and over again. Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
That was some of the things she was saying. Yes.
Your Honor, may we approach sidebar briefly?
Okay.
Okay. There's nothing briefly in this court. I'm going to skip. Oh, I forgot.
Will be our next exhibit, and again, we'll have to maybe renumber. Counsel, before you leave today, we have to figure out how to keep everything straight.
Graphic thing coming up.
And with the court's permission, Your Honor, may I have that published on the screen for the jury?
Yes.
She don't sound thrilled. It's not a pleasant picture.
Now, on direct examination, Lieutenant, hang on. Let me just have a moment.
This is John O'Keefe's right arm.
I'm going to try to get out of your way.
This is one of the
With regard to
autopsy pictures.
the injuries that you described on direct examination, Lieutenant, I believe you would mainly concentrate.
I'm sorry, I need to, please take this down for me. I need to see counsel.
Let's see how long this takes. What? Why are they letting the jury go? No.
Now, on direct examination, Lieutenant, hang on, let me just have a moment.
Now I'm back to where we were.
Get out of your way so that everybody can see. With regard to the injuries that you described on direct examination, Lieutenant, I believe you would mainly concentrate.
I'm sorry, I need to, please take this down for me.
Stalling. They had this discussion before this came up. And they don't want people to really look at it good. Because this was not caused by a car. I'm not educated in stuff, but you know what this looks like to me? Dog bite, claw marks from the dog. The victim went like this. Dog bite, his claws. That's what that looks like to me. But who am I? I'm just a snarky juror. Now, see, they went right into dismissing.
Judge, give the court and jury in the case now and hearing for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
No, that's not the one. Let's see where they are now. Okay, this should be back to him. We'll see. This should be back to Woodbury.
This court is in session. Please be seated.
So jurors, I can assure you that by Monday, I mean, we're in really good shape. It's an organizational
Oh, yeah, right.
situation that I have to deal with. So
yeah,
we've been
right.
dealing with that. We appreciate your patience and we are in good shape. And Ms. Gianetti, if you need the exhibit, it's here.
Terrific. May I have it published again on the camera?
Yes.
Now, Lieutenant, with regard to the injuries that you observed, did you notice any lividity on the body when you were looking at John O'Keefe?
Being hypothermic, he was very pale overall. So the skin wasn't pinked up yet. So it's hard to really judge the rest of the skin that way until it's warmed up and much later into the scene.
You are familiar with the term
Yep.
lividity, though?
Yes.
And could you just explain that to the jury?
That's like bruising. So the pooling of blood in lower sections.
Usually tell
So for like a cardiac arrest
where the
patient,
body
when
was
they have
when it
lividity,
was killed.
it looks like bruising on the underside where all the blood has pooled.
Because all the blood
And we
goes
did
down.
not really notice that.
But it's not actually bruising from an injury. It's just the blood being
Settling down.
Right.
It's the same thing,
So-
yes.
One at a time, please.
Yep, sorry. It appears like bruising, and bruising is basically pooling of blood under the skin. So lividity is just gravity-fed pooling of blood under the skin. And it usually happens what is the section of the body that is lowest.
I see. Okay. Now, with regard to the scratches that you've testified about and that you now observe on Exhibit 382, I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your testimony on direct examination was that you observed them in the forearm area, correct?
It was the right, like forearm to arm. I was trying to signal like right up here, but yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's my.
Yeah.
It wasn't just on the.
Not just, it was the arm area, mostly what I noticed was forearm, but there was some around there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it wasn't just below the elbow.
It wasn't up just below the elbow.
There was some above the
Yes.
elbow as well?
Yep.
That's consistent with Exhibit 382?
Correct.
I may just have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
No further questions.
Delali, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Lieutenant, thank you very much. So
Yeah,
you're all
thank
set.
No, Your Honor. Can't argue with anything you said, can you?
Our next witness, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth would call Mr. Daniel Whitley to the stand.
See how close everything is there? You got the judge, you got the judges, clerk of courts and stuff. You got the prosecution, and then you got defense. And then you have enough room to walk around behind the defense. Very small courtroom. But they had to do it that way. The other courtroom, there wasn't enough room for the jury to actually see the witnesses.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Daniel Whitley, Whitley.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a paramedic firefighter with the Town of Canton Fire
Another
Department.
paramedic firefighter.
And, how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire?
I was hired in March of '06.
And prior to that work with the Canton Fire Department, did you work within that same field in any other capacity for any other company?
Yes, correct. I worked for American Medical Response out of Brockton as an EMT intermediate
I'm going to
and a
speed
paramedic
this up.
for 5 years.
And you're a certified paramedic, is that correct?
Correct.
And how long have you held that certification?
It was, I believe, November of 2006 that I got that certification.
And is there any sort of continuing educational component or recertification process that's involved with dispatch to this call as well?
There was Engine 3, which is the District 1 engine, and at least 2 police cruisers. And then another gray SUV kind of further down from where we parked.
Now, when you arrive in this area on Fairview Road, what, if anything, do you sort of observe as far as who's there when you arrive?
When I got out, my Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Park were there.
And they were on the engine, is that correct?
They were on the engine, correct?
Now, beyond sort of personnel from your department, you mentioned that there were some police officers there as well?
Yes, Melanie and Zarif, and then 2 other females, at least 2 other females.
And the other 2 females, where were they when you first sort of get out of the ambulance?
A few yards ahead of us, a few dozen yards ahead of us, I'd say.
And were there any other vehicles beyond sort of first responders that you observed on scene?
Just that other gray SUV.
And so I guess my question is, where were the 2 females that you observed in relation to the gray SUV?
Near it, maybe in front of, maybe one was inside. There were 3 females there.
And at some point while you're on scene, you learned the identity of the patient, correct?
Yes,
And what was the name of the patient?
Karen Reed.
And you had some conversation with Karen Reed that day, is that correct?
Yes,
And do you see Karen Reed in the courtroom?
I do.
Could you just describe that to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's seated right at that table right there.
I'm sorry, if you could just point that to where she's.
Right here.
Just that's record of flight identification.
Okay.
Now, when you first sort of arrive on scene, who, if anyone, is the first person that you saw?
Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Park.
And following that conversation, who, if anyone, you speak to?
Probably briefly Lieutenant Mulaney, but more, I'm sorry, not Lieutenant, Officer Mulaney and Officer Saraf.
Now, following your conversation, let me ask you this sort of in general terms. When you respond to a call for Section 12, what is sort of the protocol that you go through when you go?
Whether it's a Section 12 or any call, basically, the lead tech generally takes over immediate patient care, goes over, assesses. Usually the partner will go over and try and find out background details, try and find not only, well, especially for a Section 12, you want to get, the tech will get, which is Jason's role, the patient story, and then I'll get everyone else's story.
And at some point, you have a conversation with Ms. Reed.
Oh, yes.
And where is that in relation to vehicles on scene? Or what is that initial conversation?
The initial conversation, she was very upset. She kept saying, so we had a Section 12 written, and that was to take her to the hospital because she made threats against her life, saying, I don't want to live anymore. If my husband dies, I don't want to be alive anymore. And myself and Jason and Lieutenant Woodbury were kind of like, well, that's seemingly more in the lines of normal grieving process after something traumatic happens to a loved one, whether they're going to die or not. We kind of didn't feel like it kind of led to that level of a Section 12 to have her transported to the hospital.
So who pushed for it?
So at that point, I exited the ambulance and I went to speak with Officer Sarif, and I said, this kind of doesn't. If we want her to be at the hospital, get a full eval, we're going to need more than just. If my husband dies, I want to die, because that seems just like normal grieving things to say. And so I went back to the ambulance. He went. I don't know where he went. I don't know whether it was cruiser or what. But he came back, notified me that her
Sustained.
And from that conversation, did you receive more information and more clarity as to statements in this reading?
Yes, Officer Sarif had said that.
Objection.
So not what he said, sir. So
We
You
were
are
informed
unmuted.
that.
Objection.
I'm not sure.
So you can't testify to what somebody else told you. You can when there's no objection regarding what Ms. Reed told you,
Okay.
but you can't testify what anybody else told you.
Okay.
So when I say sustain, that means you have to stop.
Okay.
And the lawyer will ask another question.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So, Firefighter Whitley, at some point, specific to your conversations with the defendant, you described sort of her demeanor, any observations you made in relation to that as you were speaking?
Yes, she was very upset. She kept asking if there was any chance. She kept asking us if we knew if the person ambulance 1 had transported was alive or dead, and we could not speak to that. She asked if somebody could be alive in the snow without a jacket for many hours. And at that point, we were just trying to give her any hope that whomever A1 transported was still alive. And we kind of just talked about far off hypothermia cases where, kids have fallen in rivers and been submerged for many minutes, maybe even hours, and survived with no neurological deficits. So we were just trying to give her some sort of hope on the way to the hospital that there was a chance that her husband could be alive.
Here's the thing. Who was pushing for the psych thing? For the, what do they call it? The something 12. Who was pushing for that? Because if I'm not mistaken, she actually leaves and is called back. So who's pushing this whole time? Twisting arms. And this is screwy. She was distraught. Someone she loved, the last time she saw was in good health, and now she doesn't know the last time she saw him. Did she do something? Isn't that what any normal person would do? Trying to rack your brain to figure out what the heck happened? Really? These people.
Now, at this point, what, if anything, do you know about sort of the relationship between your patient, the defendant, Ms. Reed, and the patient from ambulance 1 that have been transported previously?
She identified him as her husband.
And is that something that she said once or more than once?
Many, many times.
Now, she asked you some questions about his status and made specific reference to his clothes. Is that correct?
The only thing I recall is asking if he could have survived without a jacket.
Now, as far as
So why was he without a jacket in the snow?
these conversations that you had with Ms. Reed, where did they occur in relation to the ambulance?
They were in the back of the ambulance.
And who, if anyone, was present in the back of the ambulance beyond yourself and the defendant?
Jason Becker.
And with reference to, you mentioned that Firefighter Becker was sort of the lead paramedic or the lead tech on this, is that correct?
Yes.
So is there, from sort of his role and your role, what are some of the sort of differences in the duties and responsibilities in relation to a call-up?
So for any Section 12, our department policy is there will be 2 EMTs, paramedics, firefighters with during transport at all times. That's both for our safety and the patient safety. So that's why it wasn't just 2 EMTs or paramedics driving to the hospital. I was in back with Jason, and Sam Park was driving.
Now, as far as you testified earlier about observations of her being sad or distraught, is that correct?
Correct.
Was that consistent throughout your interaction with her, or?
No. There would be episodes where she would like go from crying in her hands to all of a sudden perking up. She was crying about having to take care of kids, saying she couldn't do it. And I was saying, you can do this. It's not as hard as it seems. She kept saying, I can't take care of these kids. They're not my kids and they're not his kids. That's when I figured out who ambulance 1 transported. And I was saying, well, it seems like you have a good, strong support system. People who came and helped you in a blizzard to help come find your husband. She said, she asked me if I knew Carrie Roberts. I said I did. She said anybody who knows Carrie Roberts wouldn't say those things. And that kind of took me aback a bit.
I don't know who Carrie Roberts is.
It seemed strange to say something like that after you were just crying because your husband was dead.
Take you back to within.
I was just kind of surprised.
If I could take you back within that just for a minute. So you had testified that during that her description, you sort of realized who was the patient in ambulance 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, made you realize, or who did you think it was?
I live in and grew up in the Ponquag neighborhood of Canton, and Mr. O'Keefe was known for taking on his niece and nephew after. I'm sorry, I'm not sure positive of the relationship, but I believe it was his sister and his brother-in-law passed away, and it was something people admired him for, people looked up to him for. But I was able to. I also I moved into the Ponquag neighborhood back after living outside of Canton for a few years. The O'Keefes lived diagonally across from me. I never had any sort of interaction with him or anything. When I moved in, my wife was probably about 6 months pregnant, and I had 2 toddlers, so I was pretty busy. I figured he was pretty busy. I never even had a chance to introduce myself or anything before he moved to Meadows, which is how I kind of figured out.
Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning.
Okay, next, sustain. Next question.
Now, you had also mentioned during your conversation with the defendant that she had said some things about Carrie Roberts, correct?
Correct.
And how is it that you know Carrie Roberts?
Well, Carrie lives around the corner from me.
Objection.
No, I'll allow that. Next question, please.
How long have you known Carrie Roberts?
Just from moving back into the neighborhood, she would run the neighborhood block party, and she put out that she would like the fire truck there on the neighborhood Facebook page. So I volunteered to bring the fire truck to the neighborhood block party.
And was Ms. Roberts seen on Fairview when you arrived in your ambulance?
Yes.
So she was one of the other females along with the defendant.
Oh, okay.
Now, with reference to when
She
you
was
brought
one
up
of the
the
other
support
females.
system, included Ms. Roberts within that, what, if anything, did the defendant say about Ms. Roberts?
Objection.
Sustain. Next question, please.
Now, this conversation that you had with the defendant in the ambulance, about how long a period of time were we talking about?
20, 25 minutes.
And that's important. Why?
And beyond what you've already testified to, what did sort of that conversation consist of, or what was the sort of tone?
Are we digging? We're digging. We're digging. We're trying. We're
Again,
fishing.
we were just trying to give her any support. She was, once we were getting closer to the hospital, we
Objection.
So the tone and tenor. So what can you tell us about that? That's admissible, Mr. Yannetti. Go ahead.
The tone,
See
she
what
would
I
go from
mean?
being almost despondent to when she asked me if I knew Carrie Roberts, the only tone I can use to describe it is snarky.
Objection. Move to strike.
I'll strike that.
I'm the only one that can be snarky here. Okay?
Now, you transported to a Good Samaritan, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you, during the transport, where are you in relation to Ms. Reed from Fairview to Good Samaritan?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
During the transports, Ms. Reed is where within the ambulance?
I believe we have what we call a check bench, which is a long bench. There's the ambulance stretcher, and then next to the ambulance stretcher is, we call it the CPR seat. And then that's where Miss Reed sat And then I was in what we call the airway seat, which is basically like a captain's chair behind the stretcher.
And in addition to yourself and the defendant, who, if anyone else was sort of in the back of the ambulance at that time?
During transport? During transport, it was just me, Jason Becker, and Miss Reed.
So yourself along with firefighter Becker and right?
Correct.
Who was driving you?
Sam Park.
Now, when you
Yeah,
arrived
I
at
know.
Meriden, what, if anything, happened?
What, if anything?
Miss Reed was asking to be able to see John, and I made the decision that I would run ahead to see if that was in the realm of possibility with the emergency room physician there. So I ran ahead. I came into the, they call it the code room at Good Sam, and I asked if the wife could see the husband. The ER doctor asked if she would be upset. I said if she would be upset if she was allowed to or not. And I said she's going to be upset. I believe she's going to be upset either way. He was asking if she would get in the way of the resuscitation efforts, and I said it's possible. She's very upset.
And so once you arrive at the hospital with the patient, where do you go along with Ms. Reed?
We escorted her down to we call it the psych hall or the behavioral hall at Good Sam.
And about how long was it after you escorted her into the hospital that you stayed with her following that?
At least 10 minutes.
And during those 10 minutes, how would you describe sort of her behavior or demeanor during that time?
Objection.
No, he can testify to that.
He was giving the nurses a hard time about, I'm sorry, she was giving the nurses a hard time about having to get into a Johnny, about having to submit a urine sample.
Johnny is a gown.
Even the AR techs went to the physician who was in the code room to see if she could not have to wear a Johnny. And the ER doc said, no, if she's in the psych hall, she's a psych patient, needs to be in a Johnny. So at that point, there was just a nurse and a tech. We don't usually leave a psych patient with just a single nurse and a tech.
So now she's thinking she's going to be committed. That's what's going through her mind. She's already spazzing out because something awful happened to Johnny. She can't comprehend what's going on. She's still in a state of shock. She finally let them talk her into going to the hospital, and now they're going to, get her all set and ready for a room. I would be upset too.
Decided to wait until security had gone there before we left.
May I have one moment?
Yes.
No, you may not.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Yannetti.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, Mr. Whitley, when you showed up, you learned that Karen Reed was the patient that you were to deal with, correct?
Correct.
And it was your expectation that she would be going to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
One of the things that you do when you transport somebody to the hospital is you try to get a medical history, correct?
Yep.
Why is that important?
Generally, we get pertinent medical history to pass on to the hospital. So if something were to happen where the patient wasn't able to describe their past medical history, it gets passed on to the next caregiver, which would be the nurses, doctors at the hospital.
Okay. More information is always better than less information, correct?
I would say so.
And with regard to Ms. Reed, did you take a medical history from her?
I assume Jason did.
Okay. Did you learn the results of that medical history?
You'd have to refer to Jason's report.
I may have a moment now.
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Whitley, if I I'm actually going to show you two documents with your permission. One would be Jason's report.
Okay.
And you were talking about Jason Becker, correct?
Correct.
The other is a police report from Sergeant
James.
Yuri Buchnick. I'm going to give you the second page of that.
So let's do them one at a time.
Sure. And you've asked for Jason Becker's report, so I'll give you that first, okay?
Okay.
And when I approach you, I'm going to hand this to you, and I just ask you to look at it silently by yourself.
Okay.
And then look up at me when you're done.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'm going to collect that for you if you don't mind.
The first report was the NFIRS report from my lieutenant.
Was Jason Becker's report included in it
Yes.
as well?
Yep.
Having reviewed those documents, does that refresh your memory as to the medical history that was taken?
Yes.
And what can you tell us about that?
Just lists multiple sclerosis.
Karen.
What is multiple sclerosis?
I believe it's a neurodegenerative disease where the myelin sheathing of the trying to think of the word here, but
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I understand.
I'm sure you do. It's a disease.
It's a disease that's progressive and has neurological muscle control things involved with it.
And when you say progressive, that means it gets worse over time as you age?
As I understand it.
And that was the medical history you got from Karen Lee?
Correct.
And why she couldn't watch the kids?
All right. So, sir, you are all set. Thank you, Mr. Whitley. Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth call Mr. Jason Becker to the stand.
That was important to hear because that's why she was so upset about, oh my God, who's going to take care of the kids? Because she knows that she can't. She has limited length of time for that. So now she's worried about the kids. She's worried about herself, and they're going to put her in a psych ward. She doesn't have her helpmate, which is what Johnny had become.
Please watch your step.
Wait a minute. I got to speed this up.
You swear this way the others give the court and jury in the case that we're hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Because we don't want wah.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Go on and on and on and on.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name? Sure.
First name is Jason, last name is Becker, Becker.
And what do you do for us, sir?
I'm a firefighter paramedic, Canton Fire Department.
No kidding.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire Department?
5.5 years.
And prior to that, what, if any, other employment did you have sort of within that same field?
I worked at Found Ambulance and South Shore Hospital.
How long did you work at each of those respective positions?
Do we really
Found
need to
Ambulance
know
was about
this?
5 years. South Shore Hospital,
know.
approximately 3 years.
Qualifications.
And with regard to South Shore Hospital, what is it that you did there?
I was a nursing assistant in the emergency room.
And with regard to your work as a firefighter paramedic for the Canton Fire Department,
I'm skipping forward.
if anything, did she say about what she had gone through?
She had just done CPR on her husband.
And so she referred to him as her husband as well.
Yes.
And this conversation that you had sort of at the side of the SUV, is that through the door, through the window?
From what I recall, it was through the window.
And at some point, does the conversation move to the ambulance?
Correct.
About how long was the conversation at the vehicle before the conversation shifted to the ambulance?
5 to 10 minutes.
And we need to know this. Why?
As far as your dispatch for a psych or a section 4, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury sort of that process, just in general terms first, as far as what does that process entail?
And when we get on scene
Yes.
for a section,
Yes, please.
we go on scene, we kind of look at the environment, see what the environment's like, see if the patient's cooperative, uncooperative, what their demeanor is, if there's any obvious self-harm. If there's none, we kind of go up and talk to them, get a report, and ask them some basic triage questions.
And is that sort of policy or the protocol or what you followed in this instance with Ms. Reed?
Correct.
No, he made it up on the
Now-
sly, you know?
Beyond what she had indicated to you initially, what, if anything, was she asking you during the course of your conversation with her once you were in the end?
She kept asking if he was dead or could he be dead.
Is that something that she said once or more than once or something?
More than once.
Because nobody's telling her anything.
Describe sort of tone of her voice when she was saying.
It was pretty, it's kind of like it was a rapid kind of pressure speech. She was just a lot repetitive.
Well, you're a
And
good
as you were speaking with
evaluator.
her, what, if any, observations did you make of her facial area?
She had blood on her face and her neck and her chin. Blood around her mouth, her neck and chin.
So with regard to sort of any earlier suicidal statements, what, if anything, did she say in relation to that?
She said she made them because she just went through traumatic events, seeing her husband dead, and she had no plan on acting on it.
So anything she said
Now,
was just in the
to
moment.
Section 12 call, what, if anything, are you doing as far as documentation goes with respect to vital signs, things like that?
Well, it depends on the situation. In a situation with misreads, I took a regular, just vital signs, pulse oximetry, see a heart rate. But for someone like a female psych patient, it's more verbal.
And as far as any of those sort of vital signs and things that you took, what, if anything, abnormal did you note in regard to that?
Nothing too abnormal. Just the heart rate might have been a little bit high, but within normal range.
Could you please keep your voice up, sir? Thank you.
Sorry. With the vital signs, her heart rate was a little high, with 98, but it was nothing concerning.
And during the time that you're having this conversation with her in the back of the ambulance, how would you describe her demeanor throughout?
She would have periods of calmness, and then other periods she would appear agitated because she didn't want to go to the hospital.
Yeah, we heard that from the other guy.
But all in all, she was cooperative with us.
Now, at some point, she's cooperative, correct, and agrees to go?
Eventually, yes.
When you say eventually, was there some conversation related?
We kind of mentioned to her basically what a Section 12 is. And unfortunately, she'd have to come with us voluntarily or involuntarily.
So you're explaining the process to her, is that correct?
Correct.
Eventually, she agrees to go, correct?
Correct.
And as far as the transport goes, who, if anyone, is in the back of the ambulance with her during the transport?
Oh my
Me and
God.
firefighter Whitley.
And who, if anyone, was driving the ambulance to the hospital?
Sam.
Firefighter Park.
And which hospital did you transport Ms. Reed to?
We went to the Good Samaritan Hospital.
Now, during the course of transfer to the hospital or transport to the hospital, what, if anything else, did Ms. Reed say with reference to children?
She was talking about Mr. O'Keefe's children, and she was unsure, and she didn't know if she'd be able to take care of them. She was worried about that.
She was worried about that.
Yeah, she's worried about who would take care of the children if he was pronounced dead.
And what, if anything, did she say about herself in reference to the children?
She didn't think that she could take care of them on her own.
Now, as far as this other person in the patient from the earlier call, how did you refer to that person in relationship to yourself?
She was calling him husband.
Now, with reference
That I don't
to
understand.
this particular, with reference to Ms. Reed in this conversation, what, if anything, did she say in regards to the last time that she had spoken to who she called her husband?
She had said that they had gotten into an argument. She was sad because that was the last thing she had said to him was the argument, but she didn't go into detail on what the argument was about or what was said.
Now, with regard to her speaking about sort of the children, what, if any, further conversations did either yourself or firefighter Whitley have with her in regard to that?
With children?
Yes.
I don't recall.
The other female party that Ms. Reed was initially with in the vehicle when you first arrived, did you know who that was?
I don't know who she was.
And at any point in time, subsequent to that, did you learn who she was?
I did.
And who did you learn her to be?
She was Ms. Carrie Roberts.
And with relation to your conversation with Ms. Reed on that day of January 29th, what, if anything, did she say about Ms. Roberts?
Objection.
Sustained.
Good Lord, these people. These people! That prosecutor is driving me crazy. Asking the same questions over and over and over again. Asking the same questions to the next witness over and over and over and over again. He's stretching. He's stretching. He's trying to make himself and this whole thing look more important. A lot of what's going on, in my opinion, is someone who is distraught, upset, confused, doesn't understand what happened, doesn't know if she had anything to do with it or not, bounces back and forth between different scenarios as she's trying to figure things out, as she's trying to comprehend. It's a nightmare. And then they want to put her in the psych ward, put her in a gown, take all the blood tests and do all that other stuff and get her all set up for a room. You think she's going to go there willingly when she's got all this other crap going on in her mind, trying to figure things out, and then now this? No. And I don't know why they keep focusing on Carrie Roberts. There's got to be bad blood there.
In regard to the sort of medical questions that you were asked, from those medical questions, what, if any, questions would you typically ask someone with relation to consumption of alcohol or drugs?
Well, part of the psych assessment, I asked if she had taken any drugs or alcohol, and she had denied it at that point.
Yeah.
She had not, correct?
Correct.
6 o'clock in the morning. Last night she drank something.
The observations that you testified to earlier in regard to her, and by her I mean Ms. Reed's demeanor, did that change at all during the course of your interaction with her, or was that consistent as well?
Demeanor as in?
Consistently up and down.
It's a poorly phrased question. I'm going to try and rephrase it. So with regard to her demeanor,
I keep hearing
throughout
things.
the course of your interaction with her, how would you describe that?
She was cooperative. Then she'd be calm, and then eventually she would kind of get a little agitated and repetitive questions. But she seemed distraught.
Now, with respect to the person she indicated was her husband, what many questions did she ask either you or Firefighter Whitley or both in relation to that?
She was asking if he was dead. Or could he be dead? Could he be dead? And she said, could I have hit him?
Yeah.
Was that something that she asked once or more than once?
It wasn't a lot. It was more of, could he be dead? Could he be dead?
So somewhat repetitive, is that correct?
Correct.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Please be done. Please be done. Anytime. Now, how do you want me to say this again?
Sorry. Firefighter Becker, just my own clarification. You testified earlier that first arriving on scene and first spoke with Ms. Reed, she indicated that there was some statements that she said there were some statements that she did not make, correct?
Correct. Suicidal statements.
And so, exactly. So my question is, that was in reference to the suicidal statements she made prior to your arrival, correct?
Correct.
Not to any subsequent statements, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Rona. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Slowing it down.
You and I have never met, right?
I don't believe so.
I wanted to go back to one piece of testimony that you offered on direct examination, if I may.
Sure.
You had, in response to a question from the prosecutor about the medical history, and your question to Ms. Reed about whether she had had any alcohol to drink. I believe your answer today was she denied having drank alcohol the night before?
At the time that she was, I mean, she could drink. I don't know if she drank alcohol the night before, but at that time I asked if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
I'm sorry, if I just didn't hear.
Yeah,
the
you
answer.
need to keep your voice up, sir, or speak
Okay.
directly into
Sorry.
the microphone.
So I asked her if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
Oh, if she had any drugs.
Well,
or
if she
alcohol.
taken any drugs or alcohol, she said no.
Did you specify a time period?
I just assumed it'd be in the last few hours for the reason why we were there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Unsure if she had alcohol days prior, but for the reason why we were there.
Okay.
Besides, they'd be able to
So-
smell it if she had just had some.
Was it your understanding that the two of you had an understanding of what you were asking?
Sure.
Objection, move to
Yeah,
strike.
yeah. So the objection sustained. It's stricken. Ask the question differently, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, so I guess with regard to your intent and your state of mind when you were asking that question, you were asking, had you taken any drugs or alcohol within the last few hours? That's what you meant to ask?
Objection.
So the objection sustained.
What did you specifically ask?
So when I ask a patient if any drugs or alcohol, I'm talking about at that point in time, but an hour before, 2 hours before, not days before, weeks before.
Okay,
So-
and this was at 6:40 in the morning,
Correct.
Did you smell any alcohol on her at that time?
I did not.
Okay. You would agree that she did tell you at some point that she had had alcohol the night before, correct?
No.
All right. So this is now, what's today, May 3rd of 2024?
Correct.
And this happened back in January, on January 29th of 2022?
Correct.
You were interviewed by a Trooper Michael Proctor on February 14th of 2022. Do you recall that?
This Proctor
I
guy
recall meeting with
is
him, yes.
And February 14th
somebody to watch
of
out for.
2022 would have been a little bit more than 2 weeks after January 29th of 2022, correct?
But I don't know this.
Correct.
Your memory of what Karen Reed told you about whether she had anything to drink the night before would have been much better on February 14th of 2022 when you were talking to Trooper Michael Proctor than it would be today, correct?
Correct.
Because your memory doesn't get better over time, correct?
Certain circumstances, sure.
All right.
Mine sure doesn't.
And with regard to whether Karen had indicated that she took any drugs, you told Trooper Proctor she said that she had not, correct?
Correct.
With regard to whether she had had alcohol the night before, you told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that she did consume alcohol last night, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to see a sidebar on this. Please bring that with you, please.
People. Ridiculous.
And I'm having trouble hearing you most.
The night before, you told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that she did consume alcohol last night, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to see a sidebar on this. Please.
Did you miss anything? Did you not hear?
Did you miss anything?
With your permission, I'll repeat the question.
Sure.
You told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that Karen had told you that she did consume alcohol the previous night, correct?
If that's in his notes,
Well, is your memory exhausted as to whether you told him that?
I don't recall.
If you saw his report with your statements in it, would that refresh your memory?
Sure.
It's a two-page report. I'll give you both, actually. It's a two-page report. I'll give you both pages. but I have highlighted a line on the second page, so I would direct you to that. May I approach?
Yes. And take your time reading it, sir.
Yes, yeah, and please read it silently to yourself and look up at me when you're done.
You'd think they have a copy of these things, knowing that they're coming in, you know, that they would review this information. Oh, yeah, I told him that. Oh, yeah, I told him this. You would think. Well, maybe that's just me. I probably wouldn't have the wherewithal to think ahead like that anyway.
So I did say.
So, Mr. Becker, a couple of things. Wait for a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But
Sorry.
also,
Sorry.
you have to keep your voice up.
Okay.
I'm close to you and I'm having trouble hearing you. Most
Okay.
of the jurors are further away.
And the way this works is I have to collect that from you and then ask you a question, okay?
So,
If I may approach you on.
Yes.
There's rules and regs in this place.
Having reviewed that document, does that refresh your memory as to whether or not Karen Reed, or strike that? Having reviewed that report, does that refresh your memory as to the fact that you...
Does that refresh your memory?
Does that refresh your memory?
it does.
Okay. And so did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 14th that Karen Reed had told you on January 29th that she had consumed alcohol the night before that?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that when you were listening to her talk at times, that her speech was very rapid?
Correct.
And particularly when she had said the words, you know, is he dead? Is he dead? She would repeat it repetitively, correct?
Correct.
And she was fixated on that, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to
They might bring in somebody who's gonna,
last
a doctor, going to verify that that's
interaction
typical
that she spoke about,
of someone
with
being in shock.
whom you thought she said her husband.
I'm guessing.
She didn't give you any detail about that, correct?
She did not.
You don't know whether it was an in-person communication?
That wasn't my position to ask more details about that.
Oh, and I'm not criticizing you, sir. I'm just trying to get to what your knowledge was in terms of
Right.
information you got from her. So she didn't specify that it was an in-person communication, correct?
No,
She didn't specify as to whether it was a phone conversation?
she did not.
She didn't specify whether it was a text message exchange back and forth?
She did not.
And she didn't specify whether it was an angry voicemail that she left, correct?
She did not.
No further questions. Thank you.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Do we have to? You should already have a question.
I have nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank
All
God.
right. All right, Mr. Becker or Firefighter Becker, you are all set, sir. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. Yes, you can leave that right where it is. Thank you, sir. Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
I think this is the last witness of the day, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I think she goes into some housekeeping then. I think. Hey, this is not too bad. 2 hours. It's not too bad. I think we're almost done for today. Oh. What's this guy doing? Oh. Okay. And at one point, somebody comes up real close over here. Over here. And the jury is over here.
Does it make sense that rather than starting with another witness, figure it's a Friday afternoon, it's been a long week for you all, we'll excuse you at this point. So please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen
We
to
can.
see, hear, or read anything about this case, disregard it and let us know. And have a great weekend. Monday will be a full day. We'll see you first thing Monday night.
Please rise to the jury. Rise right this way.
I don't know if they do anything else or not.
Oh, sure.
Of course, we wouldn't know this, but still, we have an advantage here.
May be seated.
I think there's an exhibit in the witness stand. All right, because I've decided that it makes more sense to do exhibits the old-fashioned way because it's simply not working out. My suggestion is that we take what we have that have actually been introduced because
not that many.
I know you pre-marked nearly 600 exhibits. They have not been introduced into evidence. So we have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 14, 18, and there are additional that are in the 300s and 200s. So what I would like to do is take all of these, and I know Madam Court Reporter has been great about sticking around all late during the week to pre-mark things. This is more important to me that we get the record straight from this point. I would prefer the jurors to have the exhibits in order and not have numbers 200 and 300 in where they should be 15 and 16. So what I would like you to all do is take a look at the exhibits that have actually been introduced. Their prior numbers, if you have referred to them by their prior numbers, I will permit you for the rest of the trial to say previously referred to as 308, but now exhibit 15 until you feel you don't need to do that anymore. So it means things are going to have to be renumbered. So, Madam Court Reporter, was there anything else we needed to discuss on
OCD.
this? Is there anything else you need from the lawyers? Okay. So, I don't want to use your you've got a list of everything, and Mr. McDermott's got a list of everything that's been introduced. Do you need me to do this, or is this something you can all do with Madam Court Reporter? And I want to come out and make sure it's right. All right, so
She's
why don't
OCD.
you all take 10 minutes to see if you can work this through. I'll come out at the end of 10 minutes, see what you have, and we'll make sure the record's straight. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. The only thing that I would ask to add to that, Your Honor, is in conformity with the court's ruling as far as redaction to the run sheets and the run reports. I'm not sure if they've been stickered or not, but there are medical records with regard to both the victim and the defendant that would be in there, and I would ask for them to either be marked for identification or taken out at this point. Okay. Ms. McLaughlin indicates they haven't been marked yet, so I would just ask to sort of retrieve.
All right, so that's sort of the second point. I assume there are many, many, many pages of medical records. And one of the things I told you this morning is if records are going to be introduced subject to redactions, those redactions have to be done before they're introduced.
Good.
It's
Good.
going to take some time. So you have to be, if you're not in agreement, then you need to tell me what you're not in agreement over, and I'll have to decide it, but they need to be redacted beforehand, just because this is a long trial. I don't want it to take any longer than it necessarily has to be. And we have to make sure all of the exhibits are in order, especially if they do end up numbering in the hundreds. So, all right, so you've factored that into your schedule. We've got many days that we won't be in session. It seems like a good use of council's time to redact records and talk. If you need additional time and we need to cut into the evidence, I'd prefer not to, but I need to know. All right. So I have received from the Commonwealth all of the videos that I requested. I received a flash drive today. When can I get the videos? I thought I was clear yesterday. Apparently I wasn't. So when can I get all of the videos that the defendants intend to introduce? I had hoped to look at them over the weekend.
We can do, it's not a matter of getting them onto a flash drive. That's quick. It's just a matter of getting them to the court. So I would invite the court to direct us how, if you want to use the weekend, let us know. We work on Saturdays and Sundays.
So so you can't do it today? You can't do it before you leave? I don't think your IT person's here, right? Oh, if you can do it before you leave, if he can just download it onto a flash drive, that would be great. Do you want to go talk to him and see how long?
You might be able to do that.
We may be able to do that.
Why don't you talk to him?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
We won't leave until we give it to you.
That would be great. And Ms. Gianetti, yesterday you did say that you'd also give me some idea on why you think they're coming in.
Sure.
Okay, so if you have that, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right.
I just want to make sure I'm very clear about what the court would like. We provided the double videos, the ones that we had put the good and Seraph cameras together. The court wants every single video that we intend to produce?
Yes.
For the rest of trial?
Yes.
Okay, understood.
All right, and that's what I requested from both of you. I received, Ms. Gilman, tell me if I'm wrong, but Mr. McDermott handed me a flash drive today that said this was all the Commonwealth's video exhibits. Yes.
And that was after we met this morning, correct? Okay.
All right, so that'd be great. I just, I want to know what's on them. I was surprised yesterday, and
Understood.
I shouldn't be surprised.
Understood.
All right, so I'll come out after you remark the exhibits. Do you need a break before then, Madam Court Reporter? Mr. McDermott? All right, thanks.
Court, all rise, please.
All right. Let me turn this off. Don't need anything popping up when I'm not expecting it. Oh, that's how I do that. Anyway. Okay. She doesn't like surprises. It's her courtroom. So I don't know how many more paramedics we're going to be going through. That's going to tell us one little nugget of something that we didn't already know. It's going to be interesting how this plays out. Obviously, there's some ill blood between Carrie Roberts and Karen Reed. She might be one of the proponents that are stressing her saying, I killed him, I killed him, I killed him. Or I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, whatever it is. The only point of reference, okay, I believe her. So we'll make that clear. The only point of reference, in my opinion, that she has is the last time she saw him, she was in a car. And he left the car. And now he's dead, roughly in the same area he was in the last time she saw him. So that's her only point of reference. So that's why she keeps going back to that. That's the only thing that makes any kind of sense, but it still doesn't make sense to her. Now, I have a question. The one gentleman, the one paramedic, firefighter, whatever, started describing the jacket that he had on as being a heavy winter coat. No, it wasn't that. That had to be amended to it was a lightweight zip-up athletic jacket. I forget the terms that they use, but basically a lightweight hoodie. Now, the insinuation is that he was cut out of that. Yes, I know somebody was talking about that, unless I'm mistaken. But that gets, folded up and it goes with the person. And then that stuff is released either to the police or to family. My question is, after having seen his arm, which to me looks like he went like this, something grabbed a hold of his elbow, and paws came up and scraped him, because that's the image that I see. If that's the case, then the jacket he was wearing should have holes in it from the teeth and should be slightly shredded from the nails. But I don't hear anybody talking about that, which makes me wonder if this didn't occur in the house when he didn't have a jacket on and it was bare skin, and then they put a jacket on him and threw him out in the yard. Because the coroner, the information that I have heard is that the cause of death. Oh, my fibromyalgia brain. The cause of death was hypothermia. So he was still alive when he was put out there on the porch, in the front yard, with only a lightweight jacket. Okay. Now, did he have a heavier coat? Did it get shredded? Or did it get thrown out? Some of the information that hasn't come up in court yet, but that I heard, was the Roberts gentleman in the house they were in front of, one of them was known for his temper. A scenario that was presented on another show. I know I shouldn't be watching these other things, but a scenario was presented that the hothead Roberts and O'Keefe got into a fist fight, hence this black eye and the knot on his forehead, got into a fist fight, and their dog, Sophie, I think the name is Sophie. Oh, I know. Opening statements said the dog was rehomed. But what he didn't say was the dog had failed police training. So the dog knew how to go for this, but they're not supposed to use their paws. So these should not have happened. The dogs are supposed to grab a hold and pull down to restrain a person to, onto the ground, to bring them down so the police can handcuff them and stuff. Sophie never learned it. So she failed her police training. So there's all kinds of murkiness around this. And it's aggravating when you're trying, well, with anything. It's aggravating when you're not given the facts, you're not given the truth, when you're being evaded and sidestepped and whatever. But I want to know if the jacket was shredded. I want to know why they didn't interview anybody who was inside, anybody who had been there that night. They were all protected. Why is that? Because it's the good old boys. So anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. I do not see anything glaring that's going to come up that's going to offset the damage that was done in opening statements. When the prosecutor just went on and on and on, and wasn't really saying anything. He was giving a list. I've got all these people I'm going to bring in front of you. Whereas the defense told the story. You are going to hear this. You're going to hear that this happened and then that happened and then that happened. Forget all this other fluff, all this other crap. Quit stacking the deck, guys. If there's not something solid, you ain't changing my mind. The cast was set with opening statements. That's what I feel. So we'll see what happens next week. If I can handle this. Oh, this ain't easy, folks. Especially when you deal with somebody who's got chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and a few other problems. And let's see, has a schedule where helping family out. So I won't be doing any live streaming. I will be focusing on what other people are sharing. That's all I can do. I hope you enjoy it, no matter how it happens. Nothing else. I'm in school. I'm learning how to do this. So anyway, I will let you go. I got a little bit better today than I have been. And we'll see if by the end of this, I've got it down a little bit more. Speaking it down, man, it's light. That's better. Maybe a little more. Maybe a different color. That's better, I think. I don't know. Anyway, I will let you go. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I will catch you sometime Monday night or Tuesday and let you know what be happening, dude. Okay? Until then, take care. God bless. And we'll catch you then.